After winning a staggering 80 million yuan in the lottery, I immediately pulled out of the National Online Novel Contest. The moment my junior, Julian, discovered my decision, he struck me hard across the cheek and shouted, "Abandoning the contest at such a crucial moment. Don't you care about our mentor's guidance or the hopes of your peers? Could it be that something is wrong with your submission and you're terrified the judges will find out?" In my previous life, Julian had submitted an entry that was identical to mine. I turned to the editor, whose ideas had once ignited my creative spark, and to my closest companions with whom I had spent countless hours seeking clarification. Instead, they issued a public apology, pleading with the judges to grant me another chance on account of my youth. The online community was merciless. They labeled me a shameless plagiarist. Unable to prove my innocence, my reputation was forever tarnished. Not only was I expelled from school, but I was also saddled with an enormous penalty for breach of contract. My mother, who fought on my behalf, soon became the target of vicious online abuse and fell gravely ill overnight. One misfortune piled upon another, and in the depths of my despair, I climbed onto a rooftop and leapt, hoping to rid my family of the burden I had become. Yet, when I next opened my eyes, I discovered that I had been transported back to the week before the contest. "Calvin, I've prepared your favorite ribs. Make sure you eat something before you start writing, okay?" My elder sister, Marissa, said with genuine concern. "You haven't had a bite all day," she added, her worried expression nearly causing me to lose my balance in my chair. Moments later, Fiona, my cherished childhood friend, swung the door open and presented me with a neatly wrapped package. "I heard your shoulder has been aching. This massager should help ease the pain," she said kindly. Such caring gestures were once commonplace in my former life when I believed I was the luckiest person on earth. Marissa, 5 years my senior, had always looked after me with tender care, and although Fiona was not of my blood, she had always been as dear as family. But now, after being reborn, an icy numbness had taken hold of me. I recalled that in my previous life, during the National Online Novel Contest, the story I submitted was exactly identical to that of my junior, Julian. The moment the judges uncovered the duplication, they acted without hesitation. As an award-winning author with high hopes of clinching first prize, I was confident. Until the truth unraveled and I was swept into a maelstrom of public outrage. Desperate for support, I reached out to the editor who had once sparked my creativity and to Fiona, expecting them to help clarify the situation. To my dismay, both refused to stand by me. Without even consulting me, Marissa had issued a public apology pleading with the contest organizers to grant me a second chance because of my youth. Instead of sympathy, the netizens exploded with fury. No wonder someone would dare plagiarize in such a prestigious contest. So much for having an editor's sister to cover for them, a whole family of crooks. Others sneered, "A simple apology isn't enough. If an apology worked, why would we even need the police?" One even taunted, "He's too old to be such a baby. If you want to act like one, go home and spare us." Under relentless public pressure, the contest administrators dismissed Marissa's plea. In truth, I had entered the contest solely to win the 300,000 yuan prize. My sister had fallen ill and lost her voice, and I had intended to use the prize money for the surgery that could restore her vocal cords. Yet when the contest ended, not only did I fail to secure the prize, I was burdened with an enormous penalty. Meanwhile, Julian, who had no prior writing experience, unexpectedly clinched first place. His entry was hailed as one of the finest short stories in recent memory, sold to a film company for adaptation, and overnight he was elevated to God-tier writer status. In contrast, I became the villain, the plagiarist despised by everyone. The fallout was catastrophic. Expelled from school and drowning in debt, I was forced to deliver food just to survive. But when customers recognized me, they deliberately left scathing reviews, nullifying all my hard work. My mother, who had tirelessly tried to secure justice for me, was bombarded by vicious abuse online, eventually ending up in the ICU. In a desperate bid to cover her mounting medical bills, I took a menial job at a construction site hauling cement. But within days, the foreman dismissed me, confiscating all my wages. Then a call from the hospital shattered the last of my hope. My mother's condition was critical. With every ounce of hope exhausted, I succumbed to despair and, one night, jumped off a hospital rooftop. When I next awoke, I found myself inexplicably back in the week before the writing contest. I was utterly stunned. The novel I had composed for the contest, crafted from the inspiration and materials Marissa had provided, was indisputably my own work. How then could it have been twisted into an act of plagiarism? Yet I possessed no evidence to clear my name. What baffled me further was that Julian's submission was an exact replica of mine. Had Marissa perhaps supplied him with the same materials? At that moment, Marissa and Fiona's behavior appeared entirely ordinary, deepening my suspicions. I resolved to investigate Julian's social media profile. I knew that by now he must have already shared his writing ideas and outline publicly. To cover my own tracks, I hastily scribbled an alternative outline. Feigning a stomachache, I excused myself to the restroom. Fiona gave me a disapproving look and scolded, "You're such a troublemaker. Marissa already provided you with all the inspiration, yet you still want to slack off?" Marissa quickly interjected, "There's still a week until the contest, Calvin. Don't rush. Just follow my plan and you'll secure first prize." But time was short, and I had to uncover the truth. Inside the bathroom, I locked the door and logged on to Julian's social media. I recalled hearing that his father was a high-ranking executive at a state-owned firm and his mother a respected professor, and thanks to his striking looks, he had amassed many fans. I was never close to him personally, although Marissa's work had occasionally put her in contact with his mother. I remembered a time when Marissa had gestured to Fiona, praising Julian as suave and refined, so very unlike me, a simple country bumpkin. She had even advised Fiona that when choosing a husband, one should look for someone like Julian, handsome and from a reputable family. At the time, I dismissed it as a joke, but now I suspected she might have been serious. What further perplexed me was why someone with Julian's elevated social status would want to harm me. Suddenly, I came across one of his recent posts, where he shared his writing inspiration and a complete outline of his novel. I froze. Wasn't that the very material Marissa had just given me? Even more disconcerting, his outline was nearly identical to the one I had hastily drafted. The comment section brimmed with enthusiastic praise. "This innovative narrative structure is unprecedented. The online literature world is finally being revolutionized." And, "Hurry up and pen the novel. I'm convinced you're destined to win first prize." While it was possible that our inspirations might coincide, the complete identity between his outline and mine sent a chill down my spine. Had Marissa and Fiona been behind this? Only they had access to the study room where the materials were kept. Could it be that the bonds of family and years of shared history meant less to them than their newfound connection with Julian? I spent a tense hour in the restroom weighing my options and finally made a bold decision. In my former life, I had written my contest piece in the fantasy genre, my comfort zone. Although I had won first place then, it was nothing groundbreaking. This time, determined to clear my name and defy the plagiarism accusations, I resolved to switch gears entirely and write a suspenseful mystery. No matter the outcome, creating something new would at least help me reclaim my honor. That sleepless night was filled with anxious thoughts. Early the next morning, I slipped out of the house and made my way to my mentor's residence. My very first teacher, the one who had encouraged me to pursue writing. When he saw me, his face lit up as he greeted me with a steaming meat bun. "Calvin, you haven't had breakfast yet, have you?" he asked, noticing the troubled look on my face. "Is something wrong? Tell me what's bothering you." I forced a smile and admitted, "Teacher, if I fail to win first place in this contest, will you be disappointed?" He tousled my hair and replied, "It doesn't matter if you don't win first. Your talent is undeniable. You can always try again." His words filled me with renewed resolve. After leaving his home, I received a message from Marissa. "Calvin, where did you go? Fiona brought you breakfast but couldn't find you. She's getting upset." I quickly replied, "I stepped out to buy some writing materials. I'll be back shortly." In that moment, I resolved not to use the inspiration and materials Marissa had provided. I hadn't yet told either of them that I was changing the genre of my entry, and they were now my prime suspects. Determined to revise my contest entry, I made my way to the school library. I remained there for hours, finally completing a detailed outline for my new novel. After stretching and feeling the strain of long hours, I decided to take a brief respite and check for any notifications from Julian. To my astonishment, both Marissa and Fiona appeared unexpectedly. I wondered how they had known I would be here. Without a word, Marissa placed a steaming lunchbox on the table with a silent, "I thought you'd be too engrossed in your writing," while Fiona followed by handing me a thermos, saying, "I prepared some chicken soup this afternoon. You need to refuel your energy." Their gestures appeared sincere, and for a moment I wondered if I had overanalyzed the situation. But if they weren't behind this, then who could be? My mind churned with turmoil, yet I mustered a smile and said, "You two arrived at the perfect time. I'm absolutely starving." I excused myself to wash my hands before eating. As I headed toward the restroom, I decided to check Julian's social media once more. Standing by the sink, I logged on and, as expected, found a new post. In it, he complained, "How can someone be so shameless? I generously shared my inspiration and outline, and yet someone just lifted it without permission. Isn't that essentially theft? Looks like I have to start rewriting everything." The post was accompanied by an image showing the back of a male student in the library. Anyone who knew me would immediately recognize it as my own. Who then had taken the photograph? The comments under his post were filled with fans wondering if Julian could possibly rewrite an entire novel in such a short time. Julian responded, declaring that he intended to craft a suspense thriller and that his outline was already complete. I froze in shock. I had never disclosed my plans to change genres. How could our topics align so perfectly? There had to be someone monitoring me. Could it be Marissa or Fiona, and if so, why? My thoughts were interrupted by a tap on my shoulder. "Calvin, what are you zoning out for?" Marissa asked. I jumped, realizing that both she and Fiona had come to check on me, concerned that I'd been away too long. Still startled, I mumbled, "Sis, you two go ahead. I'll eat later," uncertain whether they'd noticed my browsing. Before I could add anything, Fiona snapped, "Calvin, after Marissa and I went out of our way to bring you food, is this how you're going to treat us?" Marissa quickly waved her hand to calm Fiona, saying, "Fiona may be sharp-tongued, but she truly has a heart of gold." Fiona then added, "We were just worried you might overwork yourself." I quickly assured them, "I understand, don't worry about me." Fiona, however, remarked, "If it becomes too much, I can even stay in the dorm for a few days to ease your load." With that, she pulled Marissa out of the study room, leaving me with a brief sense of relief. Later, around 10:30 p.m., I packed up and returned to the dorm. As soon as I entered, I overheard my roommate Derek discussing Julian's latest social media post. Curious, I listened and discovered that the post featured a photo of 3 hands clinking cola cans in a toast, with the caption, "Thanks to the lovely ladies for the treat." I immediately recognized 2 of those hands as belonging to Marissa and Fiona. When had they become so cozy with Julian? The post also contained 2 comments. Fiona had written, "Julian will always be my heartthrob," and Marissa had added, "Don't worry, Julian, I'll ensure you win first prize." I blinked in disbelief. Yet, upon refreshing the page, the comments had vanished. It was unmistakably clear. This plagiarism scandal was intricately tied to them. Not entirely surprised by this revelation, I was somewhat relieved that, being safely in the dorm, their interference would be minimal, allowing me to focus on my writing. But just as I was drifting off to sleep, I noticed Derek stealthily rifling through my notebook. In a flash of anger, I shouted, "Derek, what do you think you're doing?" Derek flinched and dropped my notebook onto the floor, trembling as he did so. "Why are you yelling? Don't think I haven't figured it out? The person who plagiarized my cousin's work is you," he accused. "How unlucky is it to share a dorm with a plagiarist? I didn't even force you out, and yet you're causing such a scene. It's extremely rude." It turned out that Derek was, in fact, Julian's cousin. Derek had deliberately posted my personal details in the comments section of Julian's post. Before long, my private messages were inundated with vulgar insults. Some individuals even went so far as to dump dirt on my bed and place dead cockroaches in my water bottle. Feeling utterly helpless, I reached out to my mentor, the one person who, in my previous life, had fought desperately to clear my name, even though he ultimately failed. Despite that failure, he remained the only person I could trust. Upon hearing my predicament, he immediately handed me the keys to a modest apartment. "Focus on the contest," he advised. Don't worry about anything else. We'll address everything once the contest is over. Just before the contest deadline, I finally completed my novel. All that remained was to submit the document. At that very moment, Julian's social media updated again with a post proclaiming, "My entry has been submitted. Thanks to everyone for your support during this time." The post featured a screenshot of his document. Although the text was blurred, I could still discern the opening lines. It was identical to the novel I had just finished. Even more infuriating was that his post had been published 10 minutes before mine. Overwhelmed with rage, I smashed my notebook into pieces. Despite being reborn, it seemed that I could not escape the fate of my previous life. In that crushing moment, I felt like giving up entirely. Then, unexpectedly, a notification lit up my phone. The lottery ticket I had purchased a few days earlier had won 80 million yuan. I was so elated that I nearly leaped from my seat. Given my family's financial struggles, my university tuition had been paid with writing fees and student loans. The 300,000 yuan contest prize had once been my only hope. But now, with this enormous windfall, the contest's outcome no longer mattered. A new plan took shape in my mind, a plan to ensure that Julian would pay for his brazen plagiarism. I chose to keep my lottery win a secret. Instead, I revised my contest entry and submitted it once more. Julian had a penchant for stealing ideas. Let him indulge his habit as much as he pleased. As soon as the contest concluded, Julian went live to recount his competition experience. The live chat exploded with teasing comments such as, "Streamer, you're so confident. Surely you'll secure at least a top 3 finish, right?" Before Julian could reply, Fiona interjected, "What top 3? Julian is undoubtedly going to win first. I have complete faith in him." The chat erupted with congratulatory messages for Julian. However, as Julian basked in the praise, his expression suddenly shifted. The viewers were taken aback as several police officers abruptly appeared in the live stream. They handcuffed Julian and said coldly, "We have received a report that you are involved in illegal activities. Please come with us." Even through the screen, the officer's authoritative tone sent chills down everyone's spine. Julian's face turned ashen and he looked frantic. To his further dismay, the viewer count on the live stream kept climbing. The chat filled with bewildered remarks. "What's going on? Isn't he supposed to be the rich, charming writer? How could he be involved in such activities?" And, "Yeah, he's so young, a university student. Could this be a mistake?" Others suggested, "It's clearly someone trying to sabotage him out of envy." I understood the source of Julian's panic. He was racked with guilt. Meanwhile, upon learning of my lottery win, I disguised myself and went to claim the prize. When I saw the sum credited to my bank account, a tremendous weight was lifted from my shoulders. The fear of being controlled by money evaporated, and I felt my wits sharpen. I began to re-examine everything I knew about Julian. His father worked for a state-owned enterprise and his mother was a renowned professor. Facts that were true. But even those positions could not justify his extravagant lifestyle. He donned custom-tailored clothes worth tens of thousands, sported a limited edition watch valued at millions, and even his phone case was from a luxury brand. In addition, he frequently traveled abroad. All this aroused my suspicions. What was he hiding? To uncover the truth, I commissioned a high-priced private detective. It wasn't long before the detective uncovered something startling. Julian was essentially a tour companion. In other words, he was a male university student who accompanied wealthy women on trips, earning a hefty tip for each weekend getaway. This tip money was the foundation of his nearly $1 million monthly expenses. Yet merely exposing this secret would not be enough to satisfy my desire for retribution. So, I devised a trap. Since Julian was notorious for plagiarizing my novels, I resolved to use his own methods against him. I planned to force him into publicly confessing both his plagiarism and his unsavory deeds. I continued to use the suspense thriller I had written for the contest, but I deliberately altered its final clue. With a bit of cleverness, anyone who paid attention could easily deduce the ending, and that ending would be Julian's own undoing. I wasn't overly worried that Julian would figure out my trap. After all, he wasn't particularly bright. My goal was to force him into publicly confessing both his plagiarism and his misdeeds during the national contest, and to show Marissa and Fiona the true, ugly face of their so-called perfect idol. Just as Julian was about to be escorted away by the police, he suddenly erupted on the live stream, shouting, "I've been wronged. The real culprit behind these actions is my senior, Calvin." He continued, "He stole my contest entry and is now twisting the narrative to slander me." The live stream audience quickly rallied behind him, and even Fiona sent messages in support of Julian. Comments poured in. Julian's father is a top executive at a state-owned firm, and his mother is a renowned professor. How can someone of his standing commit such a despicable act? Another viewer declared, "It must be Calvin who's jealous of Julian. That's why he's framing and defaming him. Police, you shouldn't listen to him." Fiona's words did not surprise me, for she had behaved similarly in my previous life. Unexpectedly, at that moment, Marissa joined the live stream and began posting relentlessly. There must be someone deliberately setting Julian up. He's such a kind person. How could he do something like this? I'm willing to vouch for Julian's character and career. Fiona quickly added, "If you don't believe me, I can go live and confront Calvin directly." I couldn't help but chuckle as I read their comments. Little did they know I was holed up in my mentor's small apartment. They had no idea where I was. How could they possibly confront me? Yet, less than 10 minutes later, the door to my apartment was forcefully kicked open. Without waiting for an invitation, Marissa burst in, grabbed my collar, and shouted, "Calvin, it's you, right? You're just jealous because Julian and I are so close, so you're plotting revenge against us." Fiona then struck me across the face. "Marissa, don't even start," I retorted icily. "It's obviously him. He's been slyly stealing the materials and outlines that Julian posted on social media, passing them off as his own. And now, without a word, he dares to accuse Julian himself. What a shameless, double-dealing person." They continued their barrage of accusations while live-streaming the confrontation. I regarded them with a detached, almost unfamiliar expression. In my previous life, I had been foolish enough to believe I could win the contest and use the prize money to help Marissa get her necessary vocal surgery. Instead, I now saw that she had been manipulating me all along, luring me into the contest and setting a trap. In a burst of defiant anger, I struck one of them and said coolly, "Marissa, so now you can speak? You've been holding back all this time, merely to ensnare me in your scheme, haven't you?" Marissa froze, unable to respond. Then I turned to Fiona and demanded, "You claim that I plagiarized Julian's entry. Do you have any proof?" Fiona's eyes narrowed as she replied arrogantly, "Spreading baseless rumors without evidence can lead to legal consequences. I'm not just making wild claims. Your contest entry is exactly the same as Julian's." I sneered. "You didn't apologize, and you even resorted to hitting me while defaming Julian. How utterly shameless can you be? Are you absolutely sure I stole from Julian? If you're mistaken, you'd better get on your knees and apologize." Fiona scoffed. "I'm positive you plagiarized, and the evidence is in the entry you submitted. It is identical to Julian's." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, really? And how do you know what entry I submitted?" Fiona retorted, "Are you suggesting you're the judge of the contest? I had no idea you held such power." I countered, "Or perhaps you've been secretly monitoring me, knowing exactly what I wrote." At that, Fiona's face paled. She stammered as she realized her error, but stubbornly persisted, insisting that my contest entry was plagiarized from Julian. Seeing her obstinacy, I dialed the contest organizer's number live in front of hundreds of thousands of viewers. They confirmed that I had never actually participated in the contest, thus nullifying any claims of plagiarism. Fiona was visibly stunned and demanded, "How is this possible? You clearly submitted an entry." "Calvin, what kind of tricks did you pull?" she demanded. I stared at her coldly, beginning to suspect that everything Fiona had done for me over the years was a lie. I had long suspected that Marissa and Fiona might have been surveilling me, and now it was undeniable. When I attempted to submit my entry, I had intentionally disconnected the internet at the final moment. Although I had tried, the connection was cut, and the entry never went through. But those watching assumed I had participated. At first, I had considered withdrawing from the contest altogether. Then I realized that if I did, Marissa and Fiona might catch on and devise yet another plan to thwart my intentions. So instead, I decided to play along and turn the tables on them. When they eventually discovered that I'd not actually entered the contest, both Marissa and Fiona's faces went pale. Seizing the moment, I displayed on the live stream the novel that Julian had plagiarized from me, revealing the final twist. Julian would be forced to publicly admit his plagiarism and unsavory actions. As soon as the twist was unveiled, the live stream erupted into chaos. The live stream was inundated with a barrage of scathing and ingenious comments. One viewer marveled, "I can't believe the handsome, charming idol writer is embroiled in this scandal. Didn't they say his mother is a university professor? How can a professor raise such a disgrace?" Another user added, "Exactly. He clearly plagiarized someone else's work, yet now he's shifting the blame. And the girl defending him? She isn't even his sister, yet she's helping sabotage her own brother. Can you believe this?" Yet another comment recalled, "I saw that plagiarism scandal a few days ago. This Julian character, who's clearly a fraud, even had his cousin cyberbullying people. He's utterly shameless. People like him who defame others and invade privacy should be thrown in jail." Marissa, realizing that I hadn't even entered the contest, looked completely stunned on screen. Fiona then interjected, "Calvin, why didn't you tell me you weren't even participating? Well, I've been working so hard for you. You must have been enjoying yourself, huh?" One viewer added, "Exactly, Calvin. You're so cruel. I even went out of my way to cook you chicken soup to help you recover, thinking you were struggling with the contest. I must have been blind." I sneered, "Marissa, stop with the sanctimonious act. Didn't you hide that you could actually speak? How are you any nobler than I am?" Fiona retorted sharply, "Whether you participate or not is your business. Why should I have to inform you?" I countered, "And as for whether you truly care about me or about Julian, you both know the answer in your hearts." Fiona then snapped, "Your so-called concern was nothing more than keeping tabs on me to ensure I'd play right into Julian's hands." Marissa, caught off guard by my words, visibly agitated and replied, "Even if that's the case, you shouldn't have defamed Julian like that. A man's reputation is incredibly important. You should know better." I shot back, "Aren't you afraid I'll sue you for defamation?" Meanwhile, Julian, watching the mayhem on Marissa's live stream, began tearing up. "Marissa, I've really been wronged. Calvin is the one defaming me. You must help me seek justice." He then pleaded with the police. "Officers, you can't simply take Calvin's side without evidence. Everything needs to be proven. It's Calvin who's the defamer. He's the one you should arrest," he insisted. A police officer replied coldly, "Why aren't we arresting him? Is it because he's given you some sort of benefit?" The officer added, "Watch your words. Reckless accusations won't be tolerated. We're here to arrest you because we have evidence. We kept it under wraps to spare your pride, but if you don't care, then so be it." As soon as he finished, Julian's face drained of color. In this second life, as I recalled everything about Julian, I realized he was not only malicious, but also exceedingly foolish. He took perverse pride in his misdeeds. He believed society mocked poverty, but conveniently overlooked immorality, so he made no effort to hide his misbehavior. Meanwhile, his admirers continued to view him as a wealthy, handsome young man without a doubt. Thus, once I had gathered all the damning evidence through my detective, I immediately handed it over to the police. With such evidence in hand, it was only a matter of time before the authorities could act, and Julian never saw it coming. In front of hundreds of thousands of viewers, he effectively exposed himself. His eagerness to self-incriminate left me no choice but to let events unfold. When the police later released the details of his crimes during the live stream, Julian's face cycled from pale to green and back again. Finally, he could no longer contain himself and begged the officers to shut down the stream and take him away. Seeing Julian led away on Marissa's live stream filled me with immense satisfaction. In my previous life, he had forced me to take the fall for his misdeeds. This time, I reclaimed my dignity. Once Julian's live stream ended, the audience, still ravenous for gossip, swiftly switched their attention to Marissa's stream. Upon seeing me on screen, they immediately began showering me with praise. Comments poured in. "You're the one who's won so many awards and even published books. You're so humble." Exactly. Only a writer with true intelligence could devise such a brilliant method to expose someone who defames him. "Clean, efficient, and inspiring. I'm a fan now," one comment sneered. "But wait, that girl defending the plagiarist, is she really your sister? Why would a real sister help another guy like that? If not, you should cut ties with her." Another added, Not to mention your childhood friend who's been helping that fake intellectual defame you. Man, you've really been surrounded by trash. Watching Julian being taken away while Marissa and Fiona fumbled on the live stream, it was clear they were the new targets of the audience's ridicule. Reluctant to leave the stream due to its high viewership, they eventually ended their broadcast with sullen expressions. They shot furious glares in my direction before rushing off to the police station to check on Julian. As I watched the transformation in public opinion, I couldn't help but remember the bitter days of my past life when I was the one subjected to relentless cyberbullying. In my previous life, after Julian accused me of plagiarism, my notoriety skyrocketed, but it came at the cost of endless cyberbullying and infamy. In this life, though, I found myself receiving genuine fame and praise. Yet despite the accolades, I could not feel any real joy. The public's tastes were shallow and fickle. They cared little for the truth and simply followed the prevailing trends. That same superficiality had ruined my life before, but now it fueled my desire for revenge. Then something in the livestream comments caught my attention. Fiona's remarks seemed aimed at climbing the social ladder by fawning over Julian. But what about Marissa? Why was she so eager to see me harmed as well? A chilling thought struck me. Could it be that she isn't truly my sister? Without delay, I hurried home. Before Marissa could return, I secretly snipped a strand of her hair and sent it off for a paternity test. Things were rapidly becoming more complicated. It wasn't until Julian's arrest that I discovered exactly how he had managed to plagiarize my work. At first, I suspected that he might have installed surveillance cameras in my home through Marissa and Fiona, or perhaps planted a spying virus on my laptop. But after moving into my mentor's modest apartment and having my computer thoroughly scanned, nothing suspicious was found. Frustrated, I turned to my mentor's father, a retired police officer, for help. I explained the situation, and after a moment of careful inspection, his gaze fell upon my glasses. He asked if he might examine them. Without hesitation, I removed my glasses and handed them over. Using a magnifying glass, he scrutinized them, and suddenly his eyes lit up. "Just as I suspected," he murmured. I was baffled, not understanding his meaning. He handed me the magnifying glass and instructed me to inspect the screw on the front of the glasses carefully. To my shock, embedded in the center of the screw was a hidden pinhole camera, so tiny and expertly concealed that it would have gone unnoticed unless one looked closely. I stood frozen, recalling that about a month ago, when I was preparing to register for the contest, Marissa had accidentally broken my glasses. She had apologized and replaced the frame with a new one. Since the new pair appeared perfect, I had never been suspicious. Now it became clear. She had tampered with them. No wonder she always seemed to know exactly where I was. My mentor's father explained that this type of pinhole camera was exceptionally precise and rarely seen on the market. If someone used such a device, it would typically be reported to the police. He suspected that Marissa had been involved in activities that endangered national interests. A chill ran down my spine. I recalled that Marissa had studied programming yet ended up working as an editor at a publishing house, where she regularly dealt with professors from prestigious universities. Could it be that she was entangled in something far larger than I had ever imagined? Without delay, I removed the camera from my glasses and handed it to my mentor's father, urging him to report it to the authorities. Armed with this camera, I now had concrete proof of Julian's plagiarism. In my previous life, I had been falsely accused and slapped with a massive fine for breaking contest rules. But this time, I would not let Julian off the hook. I was eager to see how he would wriggle out once the truth emerged. And as for Marissa and Fiona, the conspirators, I would not allow them to escape either. I compiled a detailed report outlining my suspicions regarding Marissa's true identity and submitted it to the authorities. She had been hiding her real identity out of fear of exposure, and I was determined to unmask her and make her pay. Once everything was set in motion, I moved out of my family home and relocated to a small villa that I had purchased with my lottery winnings. The 80 million win prize had given me the confidence to do whatever I desired. Primarily, I no longer wished to endure Marissa's invasive interrogations or Fiona's betrayals. After settling these matters, I blocked Marissa and Fiona's contact details and signed up for a national travel group, eager to finally take a break. It was summer and school was on recess, the perfect time for a vacation. The traumatic experiences of my past life had left me constantly on edge, and I desperately needed respite. After traveling for a month and gathering a trove of local specialties, I returned to my villa intending to send some gifts to my mentor. But then, unexpectedly, I encountered Marissa outside my community. Had I not lived with her for so many years, I might barely have recognized her. She had lost a great deal of weight and looked utterly haggard. Her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were bloodshot. Before I could even call for help, she grabbed me and pulled me into a car. Marissa gripped my shoulders tightly and demanded, "Calvin, why did you move out? Don't you know how worried I've been about you?" I rolled my eyes in silence and retorted, "I think you're more concerned about not being able to find me so you can cover for Julian, aren't you?" For a moment, Marissa was taken aback. Then her tone softened. "Calvin, I know I've lied about my ability to speak, and I understand why you're angry. But I am your real sister. I truly care about you, and that's why I've been searching for you. How can you think so poorly of me?" I sighed and said, "If that's the case, now that you see I'm fine, please let me go." As I started to open the car door to leave, Marissa grabbed me again. She hesitated, and I grew impatient. "Spit it out quickly. I've got things to do and no time to waste." Finally, Marissa exhaled and tentatively asked, "Calvin, could you help Julian? He's the son of an important client of mine. This entire ordeal has ruined his reputation. He nearly fell into a deep depression. Can't you help him out, just for my sake?" I replied irritably, "I'm not even close to him. How on earth am I supposed to help?" At that, Marissa's eyes lit up. "Just tell them that Julian's submission was actually written by you, and that you accidentally submitted it using his account as a joke. That way, Julian can be cleared of all charges." I scoffed. "Marissa, are you sure you want to say that?" She nodded eagerly, her face filled with hope. I was beyond angry now. "Marissa, do you even understand what you're asking? If I make such a false report, it would be a crime. False reporting is a serious offense that could land you in jail. Do you really want to put me in that position?" Her expression darkened as she retorted, "Calvin, don't think I don't know. You've won 80 million from the lottery, so you have everything now, and yet you can't even help Julian once?" I smiled wryly and said, "You participated in the contest for your own sake, so why can't you help Julian for mine?" I stared at her and added with a touch of irony, "You said it yourself. Help me for your sister's sake. But tell me, are you really my sister?" The moment those words left my mouth, Marissa's expression shifted and her eyes avoided mine. "Calvin, what are you talking about? I don't understand what you mean." Soon after, the paternity test results came back, and I wasn't at all surprised. It felt as though I had always suspected this outcome. Marissa wasn't my real sister. Which genuine sister would go so far as to ruin her brother's life for someone else? Once the results were confirmed, I immediately began investigating my true identity. To my shock, the investigation unearthed a long-buried family secret. It turned out that Julian was actually Marissa's real brother and that I was the true son of the Liu family. Back when our mothers were in the same hospital giving birth, the Chen family was poor, while the Liu family was well off. Marissa, deeply attached to her own brother, had secretly swapped me with Julian so that her brother could have a better life, and thus Julian and I had traded fates. But genetics are an unyielding force. I had inherited my mother's intelligence and my father's emotional depth, which allowed me to excel academically from a young age. Relatives often remarked that I bore no resemblance to the Chen family, a comment I once dismissed as a joke, but which now rang painfully true. Realizing the truth, Marissa's face suddenly turned cold as she instinctively reached for a knife nearby. I sneered. "Sister, are you planning to kill me to silence me?" She retorted, "Is Julian really worth taking this extreme step?" At that moment, I played an audio recording I had secretly planted on Julian. The recording revealed his true feelings. "Marissa is so infuriating, a mute no less. She really believes that just because I call her sister, she's truly my sister. Dream on. And Fiona? She's no better than Marissa, just another sycophant. Marissa disgusts me. I hope she never harbors any delusions about me. She's too old for that. If it weren't for the fact that she could help me win first place in the contest, I wouldn't even give her a second thought. These unprincipled women are so exasperating. They have no wealth, Yet they act as if they're above everyone. They have no idea what they're really worth. Does she even deserve it? As the recording played, Marissa shoved me down and then drove off in a huff. I assumed she was off to confront Julian. But shortly thereafter, the news came. And it was not what I expected. It was Marissa's death. After listening to the recording, Marissa, clinging to a final spark of hope, went to find Julian and tried to reveal their true sibling bond, hoping to reconcile. To her shock, Julian refused to accept it. In a fit of rage, he shoved her off a rooftop. The tragic fall ended with Marissa landing directly on top of Fiona, who was below, and both died instantly. Julian was then sentenced to life imprisonment, a grim twist of fate. When I received the news, I was stunned, but I never considered reconnecting with my biological parents. If things were destined to fall apart, then so be it. All I desired was to live a carefree life, enjoying the several million in my bank account.